Try as they might, the WWE still can't convince us hardcore, super smart, marky mark wrestling fans that SummerSlam is on the same level as WrestleMania. Sure, it's proven to be a good testing ground for new concepts and sometimes delivered above and beyond expectations in terms of wrestling quality and overall entertainment, but it has never been the same end of the wrestling year, write your name into history level of event that the WWE have dubbed the granddaddy of them all. That said, it has featured the culmination of many a feud that deserved the WrestleMania spotlight and has promoted matches we never got to see headline a WrestleMania event. In this list, we'll be focusing on those SummerSlam headliners that were never copied over to the WrestleMania card, those encounters so big they deserved the open-air stadium and months worth of build, but were instead smudged into an August pay-per-view, often promoted by boobs and lots of boobs. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic.com, and here are 10 SummerSlam matches that should have headlined a WrestleMania. Join us! Number 10, The Rock vs Triple H. We're kicking things off with a match that has been rumored for WrestleMania every year for the past 5 years, a bout that would solidify the legacy of the duo's impressive, elevating feuds of the late 90s and each individual's unparalleled longevity at the very top of the game. Pun intended. The Rock vs Triple H initially took place at SummerSlam 1998 in a ladder match for the IC title, with a rematch of sorts taking place at SummerSlam 2000 when, after a few years of building their way up the card, the two hot young upstarts were in the main event for the WWF title in a triple threat that also featured Kurt Angle. If we're to follow the trajectory of the respective story arcs of The Rock and Triple H, the only logical next step in their current feud, which has already passed from the show-stealing mid-card match to WWF title main event, would be for the duo to headline a WrestleMania together. The story would all but write itself given the pair's history and their brief encounter at WrestleMania 31, but to add more fuel to the fire, the WWE could have a true business versus fan storyline, with the best for business King of Kings representing entitled corporate America, and the hard-working $15 to highest grossing star in Hollywood history People's Champ representing the aspirational audiences. It's a big money move that the WWE has almost certainly tried to throw together in the past, and the first of our SummerSlam main events that should have certainly headlined a WrestleMania by now. Number 9, John Cena vs Edge. These two post-Attitude Era headlining superstars were like chalk and cheese during their prime, with Edge representing the more adult-orientated, edgy, again pun intended, version of the WWE that the new John Cena-approved PG message never really liked all that much. Cena was always whiter than white, and Edge was, well, he always had a stain or two, let's put it that way. In the mid-2000s, Cena vs Edge was the go-to feud for the WWE, and in 2006 they main-evented SummerSlam for the WWE Championship. Prior to this meeting, Edge had cashed in on Cena post-Elimination Chamber and had held a live sex celebration on Raw as a means of rubbing in his sneaky victory. Furthermore, Edge had screwed Cena out of the WWE title at One Night Stand 2 and was generally the thorn in Cena's side at all times. Had the WWE really been smart about things, they would have held this feud aloft at the grandest stage of them all and allowed both Cena and Edge to solidify the feud's legacy as one of the best and most enduring of the entire era. Edge always managed to bring the very best out of Cena, even during Cena's prime rest holds and babyface comebacks period, and with Lita thrown in, heck, Chuck Daddy Cena in there too, this could have sold many a WrestleMania over the course of that decade. Instead, all we ever got was a triple threat with the Big Show, for some reason, at WrestleMania 25. Speaking of triple threats, number 8, Triple H vs Shawn Michaels one-on-one. Triple H and Shawn Michaels may have headlined WrestleMania 20 together as part of a World Heavyweight Championship match, but their encounter with the victorious Chris Benoit doesn't seem to do justice for how well told of a story their rivalry was. Michaels was the man in the WWE when he took a rebellious young upstart Triple H under his wing. In the mid-90s, Helmsley was kept down as punishment for his part in the infamous Madison Square Garden Too Sweet Goodbye to fellow behind-the-scenes Kliq members Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, then known as Diesel and Razor Ramon. But after Michaels retired, Triple H took his spot, not only as the leader of the group D-Generation X, but also as a top guy, and he reigned supreme for much of the next 4 years until SummerSlam 2002, when Michaels would return and beat him. Over the years that followed, Triple H would have a chip on his shoulder about it, doing everything in his power to prove he was as good as, if not better than, the Heartbreak Kid. He even went as far as to challenge The Undertaker at WrestleMania in an attempt to prove it, and he was goaded into a rematch with the Dead Man when Taker poked at these insecurities the following year. Michaels has been an ever-present part of the Triple H psyche, his presence forever pushing the game to more extreme means of control within the universe of the WWE, making the fact that they never had a WrestleMania one-on-one match an absolute travesty in terms of storytelling. The SummerSlam encounter they did have, and the resulting Survivor Series Elimination Chamber match, SummerSlam Elimination Chamber match, and the following WrestleMania triple threat made for must-see pro wrestling moments in a rampant on-and-off feud, but these two deserved the grandest stage. It was almost as if it was written in the stars. Number 7, John Cena versus Brock Lesnar. John Cena versus Brock Lesnar is the sort of marquee matchup that would sell out arenas the world over with or without the WrestleMania brand attached to it, but imagine how much bigger it would feel if it was. There's no doubting that the WWE used Cena as a vehicle through which to goad and taunt Lesnar with after the youngest ever WWE champion jumped ship for a failed NFL career back in 2004. This created a lot of real-life bad blood between the two, with Lesnar feeling perhaps rightfully disrespected and speaking out on such from time to time during his sabbatical from the wrestling ring. It was therefore somewhat poetic that Lesnar would return opposite Cena many years later and that the pair would eventually headline a SummerSlam together. The result of this was perhaps the most glorious squash match in wrestling history and certainly one of the most shocking main events in recent history. Lesnar won, but surely such a strategy would have been best deployed at WrestleMania. Lesnar had broken the streak in the year of their SummerSlam match, 2014, and Cena had headlined almost every Mania show in the build-up to that event, so having the most consistent headliner in Mania history versus the new streak-conquering monster with both reputations on the line would have been a goldmine. The two megastars of wrestling could have had the exact same SummerSlam match at WrestleMania 31. Imagine the impact that would have had. Or Cena would have won, staking a claim as being better than both Brock and Undertaker, setting up his inevitable Taker-Mania match. Like a few others on this list, this is a match that could still happen, but with contracts and outside commitments as they are, it doesn't seem likely. Number 6, Mr. Perfect versus Bret Hart. How arguably the two best technical wrestlers of an entire era, if not ever, never had a WrestleMania match is anyone's guess. These two legendary grapplers proved their in-ring chemistry and creativity in their all-time great Intercontinental title encounter at SummerSlam 1991. What's more is that their characters had built-in conflict. Both men had similar disciplines in the ring, and despite being polar opposite characters in many ways, each were variations on the same base premise. One was simply perfect, and the other was the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. Tell me the difference, and I'll give you a fiver. In many ways, Perfect and Hart were also great poster boys for the new generation era of the WWE, making a potential WrestleMania bout in the early 90s likely more of a coronation of the would-be king than a battle of skill. Even so, we'd have all paid extortionate amounts of money to see this match take place at WrestleMania, and there's no doubting that it would still be revisited time and time again if that had ever become true. Number 5, John Cena versus Daniel Bryan. John Cena versus Daniel Bryan is Superman versus the Everyman, and with each being more over than arguably anyone since the Attitude Era, it's almost criminal that this SummerSlam main event has never headlined a WrestleMania. Granted, this is one of the entries on this list that could still happen, but given the variety of circumstances surrounding a potential match, it does seem incredibly unlikely, despite how great it would be to see. Cena vs. Bryan at SummerSlam 2013 was built around Bryan trying to prove himself as a main eventer, as more than a B-plus player, while Cena was trying to assert his dominance as the biggest babyface in the company, while simultaneously wanting to prove that he could hang with a guy of Bryan's talents in terms of in-ring storytelling and technique. It was the ultimate matchup of casual fans versus hardcore fans, those who watch WWE and those who follow wrestling into the indies, and it worked. The match was very good. Bryan was given the momentary rub, and everyone seemed elevated by the whole process. Had this happened at WrestleMania, it could have had an even bigger and more profound effect, and would certainly be up there with the most memorable headlining WrestleMania matches of all time. Number 4, CM Punk versus Brock Lesnar. The Best versus the Beast from SummerSlam 2013 was a fantastic SummerSlam feud that absolutely should have headlined a WrestleMania. The build for the SummerSlam encounter focused on the difference between Punk's technical prowess and intelligence and Lesnar's brutal offense, with the subtextual narrative asking the question of which style is most effective in modern era WWE. The Beast would win, setting into motion the many years of dominance that was to come, including his ending of the streak the following year, an achievement that his opponent here, Punk, could not achieve earlier in 2013 at WrestleMania 29. Had the situation with Punk and his reluctance to work in WWE have been different, most notably him sticking around long enough, and the WWE have not been so keen to rush him back into in-ring action for that year's SummerSlam, Punk vs. Lesnar could have been the headline headlining main event of any WrestleMania from 31 onwards, pitting their differences in styles against one another on the grandest stage as the culmination of a feud built around Lesnar being able to achieve that which Punk could not, putting the end to the streak. Can you imagine how red hot those Punk and Heyman promos would have been in the build-up to a WrestleMania main event? Our faces would have probably melted off from all the excitement. Number 3, Shawn Michaels versus Hulk Hogan. Forget for just a moment about the shambles that was Shawn Michaels versus Hulk Hogan at SummerSlam 2005, and then process the fact that these two era-defining superstars never faced off at WrestleMania. Not once, not even in a tag match. In Hogan's first WWE run, Michaels was nothing more than a tag team wrestler who was making his way up the ranks with a new school in-ring style, and during the prime of Hogan's return, Michaels was retired. So the reasons for the two never locking up at Mania are more than reasonable. However, in booking Michaels versus Hogan towards the end of their respective careers, it seemed clear that the clash of eras, new generation versus rock and wrestling, and their seemingly opposite in-ring ideals, technical brilliance versus showmanship, excitement versus spectacle, were to be the foundations for a top-notch WrestleMania match. Think about it. During this time, both Michaels and Hogan's had WrestleMania matches with Vince McMahon. Surely one of those times could have been a battle of icons instead. The match wouldn't have had to be much more than it actually became at SummerSlam. Take out Michaels' horribly funny overselling, and you have yourself a better than expected bout that would be worthy of the spectacle of a WrestleMania headliner. Sadly, it wasn't to be, and given the stories around Hogan and Michaels backstage, it's probably for the best. Still, you can't help but wonder. Number 2, Steve Austin versus The Undertaker. It's amazing that arguably the two most influential men of an entire era in professional wrestling never faced off on the grandest stage of them all, especially given that one of them had a trilogy of matches with the same guy and the other was working a little lower down the card at the time. But the reality is that for all their talent and obvious chemistry, Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Undertaker were never in the right place at the right time to make a WrestleMania match happen, though they did have a SummerSlam match back in 1998. It's perhaps true that Austin and Taker never really had a memorable feud. Mostly that in 1998, Austin had to go over at SummerSlam as a means of solidifying his championship reign, and we all know that The Undertaker's streak never really became a thing until as late as WrestleMania 21, but Taker having Austin on his long list of victims and/or Austin having a streak-ending victory over The Undertaker on his list of accomplishments are scenarios that people pay to see happen. History-making moments that make WrestleMania what it is. In terms of superstar aura, there may have been no bigger in the history of the game than these two guys, and a confrontation at the biggest event of any given calendar year would have been one hell of a way to prove it. Number 1, John Cena versus CM Punk. John Cena and CM Punk had one of the best feuds in the WWE this century in 2011, as Punk hit pipe bombs and Cena lent into his internet reputation, and the matches they had were never anything less than stellar, a point proven by their SummerSlam encounter that headlined the 2011 pay-per-view, but they never wrestled at WrestleMania. Punk's push came at a time when the WWE were already building towards back-to-back matches between The Rock and John Cena at WrestleMania, and as a result, Punk was undeservedly shunned from the headlining main event spot on the card. Had he been booked to face John Cena at WrestleMania, we would have all seen the culmination of his journey from the bottom to the very top in the ultimate indie darling underdog versus big business superstar supermen encounter, and Punk could have finally placed a legitimate WrestleMania main event under his belt. You never know, it might just have been enough to make sure he never left. Between 2011 and 2013, the WWE's two biggest stars were undeniably John Cena and CM Punk, and the fact that they never got to replicate their insane Money in the Bank and SummerSlam chemistry on the WWE's biggest pay-per-view was a huge misstep from the WWE, and something we'll likely never get the opportunity to see happen. Oh. So that's our list. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and you can follow me on Twitter here. If you enjoy what we do here at Cultaholic, you can pledge to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/Cultaholic. And most importantly, don't forget to hit subscribe and join us.